Hello, everybody.
Hey y'all,
Hello, Art.
you doing?
And today we're doing something a little bit different. This is not a Lensvid talk. Today we're doing a yearly summary, you might call it,
The 2023 summary.
of the camera industry. I know statistics.
That's right. We
something
got
like
charts.
Yeah, we have all sorts of charts, and you will see them in a moment on the screen. So basically, we do this every year, not in this format specifically,
Right.
but what we have been doing, I think, since 2014 or something like that. We have been collecting the information that CIPA, which is the Camera Industry Product Association, I think,
Right.
a Japanese organization, which basically all the manufacturers are part of. So all the major Japanese ones like Canon, Nikon, Sony, Panasonic, all the big brands are part of them. And what they do is basically the manufacturers every month and at the end of the year, obviously, as a yearly summary, provide this information, provide the statistics or the data, the raw data on how many cameras were, they call it shipped. I actually call it manufactured or sold. It's basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think as far as I know, in the camera industry, more or less every camera manufactured is sold. So it's not like, they're lying in a storage somewhere and,
Yeah, what happens to the stockpile of older models? Do they count
honestly,
those?
I'm not sure how it works exactly, but they call it shipped. So we will refer to it as
according
shipped.
to these charts, these are numbers for what consumers buy, right? So basically,
they call it shipped. I
well,
call
right.
it
I mean,
sold, but yeah,
we're looking at actual market data, not production data. So on this side of on the consumer side,
I think that it's actually production data.
Is it?
But yeah, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same data. It's the same set of data every year. So comparison is, it doesn't matter what we're looking at. Actually, I mean, it's interesting. So let's look at what the numbers
look at
show.
the numbers. Okay, so just to clarify, so this data only applies to the information that CIPA has. So, for example, companies like, I don't know, Hasselblad, Leica, I'm not sure that they provide the information to CIPA. Only, again, the Japanese manufacturers. But more interestingly, also companies like Samyang, which is Korean, and all the Chinese manufacturers, which are now
probably
more and more growing in numbers, probably don't provide the information to CIPA. So it's not 100% all-encompassing, but it's the best that we have. So it is what it is. I'm guessing that in a few years, when the Chinese manufacturer might grow significantly larger, we might start to actually see a gap between what is actually sold and what CIPA is reporting. But at the moment, I think it's still fairly accurate. Okay, so let's start with 2023. And the first graph that we are going to look at, or chart, is basically the number of cameras. Again, we're calling it sold or manufactured, whatever you want to call it, of basically all the cameras manufactured per year. So if we're looking at 2022 versus 2023, we have 8 million cameras sold, again, manufactured in 2022 versus 7.8 last year, like 2023. So it's not a huge decline.
Right.
It's pretty much the same thing. But what's interesting is that what we're seeing, if you compare this to, say, 2019, which is like pre-COVID era, it's about half.
It's about half. It's a steady decline from a few years back. And
if you're looking at like 2020, 2021, and 2022, it's more or less not exactly the same thing, but very close, like 8.7, 8.3, 8, and now
it's still a decline.
Definitely it's a decline, but it's more or less like the same thing. But compared to what we had pre-COVID, it's a huge drop. And obviously, if you're going even further, like 2018, it's 90 million, and 2017 is 25 million cameras. So it's a huge drop. compared to that. But for a year-by-year sort of thing, it's not a huge drop.
Right.
But we're going to drill down more deeply and see how this drop actually, materializes in which type of cameras and which part of the world, etc. So this is the first graph. Not super interesting, but we will see more in a second. The second graph or chart that we want to look at is the number of lenses, again, sold or manufactured per year.
And so the first one was cameras. This is lenses.
This is lenses, okay. Yeah. Cameras, again, we're talking about all sorts of cameras, like with the interchangeable, non-interchangeable, DSLRs, mirrorless, all cameras. Now we're talking about lenses. So lenses, this is interesting. In 2022, we actually saw a slight increase in the number of lenses manufactured, sold, whatever, compared to 2021. So 10 million versus 9.8 in 2021. In 2023, we see a decrease to 9.1, which is quite significant. Actually, it's almost the lowest number that we had ever.
Compared to 2020 COVID year.
Yeah.
That was obviously a big drop.
That was obviously
8.8 versus 9.1.
It's almost the same thing, yeah. So that's a big drop. I'm not sure what to attribute it to. It's a much bigger drop than what we are seeing in cameras. And as we will see in a moment, the drop in cameras is actually small, even smaller than what it appears to be, because much of the drop is in cameras,
specific kind cameras.
We will see, yeah. But the drop in lenses is very strange. I have no explanation. If you have,
maybe the Chinese market is an explanation, what you mentioned earlier, because if that data is not figured in these charts, then that would account for the difference.
That's interesting.
If it's a growing, if their share of the market is steadily growing, and we're not seeing that here in this data, then that would kind of account for the change. That's an interesting,
but we hadn't seen that last year either. So you're saying that they're selling more on the expense of Japanese manufacturers?
I would think so, and I think a year is a big time for that market segment
to increase.
I mean, think about it. Think about
the number of lenses that we saw in IBC.
IBC 2022 and IBC 2023. Big difference.
Yeah.
In Chinese lenses.
But you also have to attribute this to COVID, because
of course, there's many different.
What was it? 2022
IBC.
It was a lot of Japanese.
Actually, yeah. Chinese. A lot of Chinese
didn't come because of COVID restrictions.
Right, there were restrictions.
So I don't know, but
still, it's still growing. I mean, just looking at the at the releases and the information online about stuff that's being released, there's so many more lenses now.
That's a big difference.
It's probably still a very small share of the market compared. I mean, look at all the Japanese lenses out there. But okay,
it's interesting. So if you have another theory, be sure to write to us in the comments. This is as far as we can go on this one. Okay, let's continue. So the next chart that I want to bring is the number of non-interchangeable cameras sold.
Pocket cameras
and super zooms.
There
are not too many of those.
Action cameras are not in this data set.
I don't think so.
No, right?
I don't think so. And regardless, there are no Japanese action camera manufacturers, as far as I can tell. I mean, I don't know. Maybe
Sony.
I don't I don't think so. But DJI is Chinese, and who else?
Insta360.
Probably and too. GoPro is American, so I don't think so. But no, I don't think that they count. So basically what we see in here is the continuation of the trend that we have been seeing for years. And it's basically a huge decline in the number of, pocket and super zooms. And we haven't seen almost any announcements in this category at all in recent years. So it's not surprising that people are not buying them.
The cell phone's taken over.
Oh, of course. That's a big.
It's crazy to see that 2010 was the highest spike.
108 million
compared to 1.7 in 2023. That's like a 90-some% drop.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's completely obliterated this segment of the market.
But there's still 1.7 million people that are buying these.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Look, if you have like large sensor, I'm still reminiscent of the camera. I really liked this. Nikon had this APS-C compact camera basically that I used. I don't remember the name. Put it on the screen. But back in like 2000, I remember 14, 15, something like that, the middle of the last decade, and it was great. And I think that if they would make like a new version of that, people would buy it. It was
if there's a way to make a nice
especially if it had a zoom instead of a fixed lens.
Yeah,
it was super small. You can actually put it in your pocket. And I walked all through New York with that lens, with that camera, and with a D7200 or something, and it was a whole lot of fun. Every time that I didn't want to take the big camera, just took the small one out, and it was great. But yeah. So anyway, we're seeing a fairly small decline, but again, if you're looking at previous years, almost nothing is left. I'm guessing that in a couple of years, unless something big will happen, we'll see like under 1 million compact / super zoom cameras sold per year. So that's the non-interchangeable cameras market. Now let's look at the interchangeable lens camera market.
Right.
So that's a more interesting one. And here we have, I wouldn't call it a surprise because this trend has been going on for basically since the start of the second year of the COVID. So in 2020, we had 5.2 million DSLRs and Mirrorless. In 2021, it was 5.3. Then in 2022, it was 5.9. And then last year, it was 6.1. So it's a small increase, but it is an increase.
Yeah.
And we'll, in the next slide, we're going to, graph, we're going to look at the division between mirrorless and DSLRs. And it will be even more interesting because obviously there is a trend. This is, we can't, from this number alone, we can't really understand what's really is going on. So let's move over to the next one. And where is it? Here. Okay. So this is really interesting because what we are seeing here is basically the division, as I said, the division between mirrorless and and DSLR. And let's again look from the beginning of here. I think it's actually right to start in 2019 because in 2019 we still had DSLRs selling more than mirrorless. That was the last year that it actually happened. So we had 4.4 DSLRs versus 1 million and 3.8 million mirrorless. Almost the same, but not exactly. And then in 2020, the first year of COVID, we saw a huge decrease in the number of DSLRs, so 2.3 versus 2.9 million mirrorless. And then from here, DSLRs shrank per year, more and more, and mirrorless increased. So we had 3.1 in 2021 and then 4.1. And last year we have 4.9 versus only 1.1 DSLRs.
Yeah, that's a 50% drop from 2021 for DSLRs. Yeah. So
but it's not surprising.
No, of course not. There's no advantage anymore for.
There are no new
for years. There hasn't been an advantage. There's a few diehard fans out there that just don't want to shell out new money for a new system. But I don't know who's still buying DSLRs. There's still 1 million people that are buying them.
I'm guessing. Look, Canon, as far as I know, is I think still manufacturing them. And Nikon,
not new models.
No,
older models.
All models, existing models. Let's call them something like that. So it's basically what we're seeing here is basically almost entirely Canon market, Canon cameras. So that's a lot. I think if you're thinking about it, it's over 1 million Canon DSLRs, which, as you said, are basically sort of obsolete. I mean, and again, it's not like they are bad cameras or anything, but if you compare them to all the other stuff that currently exists on the market, it's like. But the thing is this: it's mostly, I think, this 1.1 million is for the most part, I would say, entry level cameras, like the really low end ones.
I would think, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't. It would be very strange if somebody's buying like 5D Mark IV now.
Yeah, because I don't know if they're still making them at the same prices as they were back then. Then it wouldn't make sense to buy.
No, of course not.
I mean, it'd be a lot cheaper now.
Yeah, I know, but regardless, so it's mainly Canon. So what we're seeing is 4.9 million mirrorless,
which is a pretty good growth in a year.
Yeah, look, it's the highest that it has ever been. So last year was 4.1. We had 4.2 in 2018, and then for some reason it went down in 2019. I'm not sure why. But in 2023 we have 4.9. Still not 5 million, but look, if you're going back, to ancient history, in 2012 we had 16 million DSLRs.
Yeah.
So we are still very, very far from that. Like if you're looking at the market as a whole. What we don't have here, that would be really cool if we had like a division between full frame and APS-C. That could have been interesting. So yeah, maybe in the future they will add it, because this whole division between mirrorless and DSLRs is also, I wouldn't call it new, but like in prior, I think, to 2012, they didn't have this division. So in the data, I mean,
it's interesting that if you look back to 2012, that was only 4 million units sold mirrorless, and we're at 4.9 today.
Why do you say?
Well, not only, only compared to the DSLRs, that was 16 million. So it was a big difference there.
Yeah,
but as far as
2012,
they were still very new.
You had basically Canon and Nikon didn't have any professional mirrorless cameras. It was only Sony, and obviously you have Micro Four Thirds, but that's what you had. I think I don't remember what Canon had at the 20. I don't know what Canon had at the time. Nikon,
it was a very new technology. People were not on board. It was a new. I mean,
but
I
still,
guess
they sold 4 million.
4 million. Like brave people that went out and bought new things.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the difference, though. It's been steady for what 12 years to 11 years.
Look, if you're looking at the mirrorless graph here, it hasn't been a huge increase or even decrease, but the market didn't really change all that much. A million here or a million like down or a million up, but more or less that's it. It's not. I wouldn't say that it votes very, very well for the industry as a whole.
As a whole, of course not. No, I'm saying there's a big difference in the drop of DSLRs compared to the steadiness of the mirrorless.
This is what I'm saying.
So the market is not as big as it used to be 10, 12 years ago.
Significantly smaller.
Yeah, 4 times.
But we have to remember that a lot of these like 16 million cameras were entry level that basically got replaced by smartphones. That's the whole thing. Again, if we had some sort of data on full frame versus APS-C, that would give us a lot more information. But again, this information does not exist in CIPA, so it is what it is. For the last one, we don't have a graph here. Hopefully, by the time that we publish this, we will have some sort of graph or some sort of information, presentable information. But this one is a regional thing. So I was interested in also looking at the differences in cameras sold per region.
Who's buying these?
Who's buying? Yeah, exactly. In 2022, in China, there were 1.2 million cameras. This is all cameras.
All of them.
Yeah, all sorts, all types of cameras. So we have 1.2 million cameras sold, and in 2023 we had a fairly substantial increase, at least in terms of percentage, to 1.5. This is about 25% increase. So that's a pretty big difference. In Japan, we saw a decrease of about 9% from 1.1 to 1 million. In Europe, that's super surprising. I have no explanation for that. We saw a decrease of 17% in the past year, or in 2023 versus 2022, from 2.3 million to 1.9. In the US, a slight decrease of about 5% between 2 million and 1.9. And the rest of the world, basically the same thing, 0.2 million cameras, like 200,000 cameras. That's a very strange number. Again, going back to what we said,
Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
How come in China they're selling 1.5 million cameras, and in India they're selling far less than 0.2 million, because this also includes a whole slew of other countries? I know that's very strange. But looking at this entire thing, a very big increase in China and a very big decrease in Europe.
Yeah.
Any ideas? I know. I don't know what to make of this.
China's doing better. Europe is not. I don't know. No,
the only thing I can think of, I don't know, maybe the war in Ukraine is influencing like the economic situation in Europe.
So is China buying and selling to into Europe, or to like the welfare system?
I don't think that's
no, it's yeah, because these are, I don't know how many of these this is all consumer data. I don't know if this is like a government project.
It's everything. It's basically,
anyway, it's hard to tell. It's like Europe is got its own set of problems, and there's a lot of I don't know. This is a very fickle market.
Yeah. No, but if it was like in the US, for example, the change is not very big, like 5%, okay, year to year, all sorts of like economics and all sorts of other stuff.
There's a very important factor, like if the economy especially is not stable, then people are not buying new cameras. It doesn't mean that they're not using older cameras.
No, that's
and especially if older cameras are now more future-proof, then you can buy a camera 3 years ago and still be happy with it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that older DSLRs didn't do that, but still, when
they're still using the A1.
Oh yeah, people are still using 10-year-old cameras and are very happy with
stills.
Yeah,
no problem. For video, it's like a 10-year-old camera might be still, a little bit. No, but for stills, I've seen people using like older cameras for years and years, and as long as they work,
So that's that's the thing. It's like you're buying 2022, 2021 even models are still very, both stills and video, still very capable cameras. So, and I don't know, it'd be interesting to see also a graph of how many different models come out per year, because that's also it's got to be a factor. Like if there's a decrease, then is that linked to less?
It shows that the market doesn't, the companies understand that there is not enough market. I mean,
because they're not.
Recent years, Sony announced so many cameras.
Well, because Sony is still fighting for
market share.
For market share. There's actually in this data, this is not all the information that CIPA provides. There's more graphs and stuff. In previous years, we looked at that, and I remember last year looking at market shares. It was very interesting. Sony is definitely a big player already for years.
I don't think that the CIPA doesn't provide market share in terms of like which company has more market share. Other publications or whatever do try this. But
maybe it wasn't CIPA. I was looking at some
CIPA is
information.
Yeah.
But still, Canon is still a very much on the heels, or maybe even ahead in some, depending on the area.
It has about at least 40% of the market, if not more, depending on the region. And
so Sony is just that's their policy to keep going, to keep fighting for it. Canon, in many respects, is
because they're the leader. They don't feel
not as active. Yeah.
But that's the numbers, and we'll be very happy to continue a discussion about all of the numbers that we just gave. If you have ideas on why we have seen the numbers either decline or in some cases increase in some regions or in general, and just write to us in the comments. And of course, we have LensVid Talk and more reviews coming up very soon.
You can go check out the previous articles about the CIPA data from previous years.
We have 10 years of these
on the website
with all of the graphs, and we'll have, of course, all this data on our website on LensVid, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye all.
Bye.